Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hello and welcome to Time Tunnel, where we find out what was making news in the past. I'm Alicia Davis in New York, and today we travel back to this day in 1972. Howard K. Smith had the news.
Good evening. I'm Howard K. Smith in Washington. Harry Reasoner's on assignment. These are tonight's headlines. Senator Eagleton says Senator McGovern is 100% behind him in his decision to remain in the race for vice president. Senator McGovern accuses President Nixon of deceiving the American people by holding out hope for a negotiated peace in Vietnam. The State Department says U.S. bombs have hit 12 dikes in North Vietnam, but damage was minor. And a strike by 42,000 longshoremen shuts down all major British ports. Purely from the point of view of public identification, the Democratic vice presidential candidate is rapidly becoming as well known as the party's presidential candidate. The nation's newest top-ranked celebrity has returned from Hawaii to California, apparently doubly determined to remain the vice presidential candidate. ABC's Bill Zimmerman is with him.
No longer any doubt that Tom Eagleton is now a household word.
How do you spell Eagleton? Spell it.
E-A-G-L-E-T-O-N.
Right. Eagle with a ton on it. Thank you very much. Let's give it the old me. How about that?
And there is no longer any doubt that Tom Eagleton intends to stay on the Democratic ticket. If anything, the comments and editorials suggesting he withdraw and the rumors and innuendos have redoubled his determination.
We're a very sophisticated country, thank God. And we're not going to let a Jack Anderson or somebody else drive politicians who've devoted their entire life to public service to drive them out of office. I'm not quitting. I'm not getting out. We're going to win this election, and I'm going to be the next vice president of the United States. I'm not leaning, tilting, inclined toward bowing out. Quite to the contrary. I am about as determined as one human being can be determined that I'm going to stay in this race. And when Anderson's statement yesterday that would go right to the depth of my political competence and scar me and my family, no, you're not going to get me out of this race. Never. So I'm pretty confident. I mean that. I'm not cocky. I'm not arrogant, but I'm confident that the public's with me and they're going to stay with me. And I'm going to stay with them.
Along with the brickbats, Eagleton has received sympathy and support during the past couple of days. He got an emotional endorsement from the Retail Clerks Convention in Honolulu yesterday, and he got calls from well-wishers today, including Senators Mike Mansfield and Ted Kennedy. Eagleton now clearly feels he can ride it out, and he says by Labor Day, though Tom Eagleton will still be a household word, he will not be the predominant issue in this campaign. Bill Zimmerman, ABC News, with the Eagleton campaign in San Francisco.
Senator Eagleton is said to be considering a national broadcast on television to state his case directly to the public. While Eagleton seems more confident of his position today, there's still continuing pressure for him to quit. The New York Times called on him to step down, saying he was, quote, grievously at fault for not telling Senator McGovern in advance about his medical history. Within the Democratic Party, there are continued rumblings about the problem of keeping Eagleton on the ticket, as ABC's Sam Donaldson reports.
McGovern headquarters in Washington looks happy on the surface, but the senator's top staff men are deeply worried about the Eagleton affair. They are hearing privately from many old-line Democrats that Eagleton should be replaced. And a few of McGovern's most ardent supporters are saying it publicly. One of them is the Democratic leader in Queens County, New York, Matthew Troy.
Well, I had assumed that it would happen today, but now I believe it won't because of Jack Anderson's charges. I think it would be folly to believe that he would get out under this kind of a cloud. I think you'll see probably by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week that Tom Eagleton will resign, regardless of what Senator McGovern asks him to stay on or not, because I think he realizes what it means if he doesn't. I've made some suggestions to Senator McGovern's people and to Senator McGovern, and I've asked them to consider Larry O'Brien first and foremost, because I think he would solve a lot of problems with the regular organization, or Pat Lucey, the governor of Wisconsin, or Sergeant Shriver, or Kevin White, the mayor of Boston. I think any one of the four would fulfill what I'd like to see in a vice president.
Henry Kimmelman is McGovern's finance chairman. He says many contributors support Eagleton completely, but there are some with doubts.
Well, there are a certain number of contributors and past contributors who feel at this point that Senator Eagleton would be detrimental to the ticket. I think the interesting thing is that I've been able to even with those who seem to have some strong feelings, explain that Senator McGovern has taken a position that his political judgment so far has been right, and I think they ought to go along with his judgment on the matter, and we haven't had anybody ask for their money back.
I understand that at least in one instance, a large contributor has stopped payment on a check. The sum was $65,000. Is that correct?
Well, there was a payment stopped on a check, Sam, but that was completely unrelated to the Eagleton matter. Really.
If Eagleton is eventually replaced, it will almost certainly require Eagleton's cooperation. As one McGovern lieutenant put it, George McGovern must not appear to be ruthless. If it comes to that, Eagleton must announce an unequivocal withdrawal, and McGovern must accept it with deep regret. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, Washington.
A nationwide telephone poll conducted by the Albert Sindlinger Organization indicated that among those persons who have discussed the Eagleton issue, 60% are sympathetic towards Eagleton. About 30% expressed a negative feeling towards Senator McGovern for being caught unawares. Senator McGovern engaged in some public politicking today, his first since the disclosures about Eagleton were made. McGovern began by taking part in a parade at Custer, South Dakota, near his vacation retreat. The story from ABC's Stephen Gear.
There's gold in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and today's parade was in celebration of the discovery of the precious metal here. But for George McGovern, there's been little to celebrate since his running mate disclosed his medical history at nearby Sylvan Lake. And the glitter of the Miami victory must now seem a bit tarnished. If the Democratic candidate seemed slightly subdued as he and Mrs. McGovern greeted admirers here in Custer, that was easily understandable. Several times, McGovern has restated his intention to retain Eagleton on the ticket, but some of his aides have been expressing doubts. And late yesterday, the senator ordered them to stop discussing the matter. McGovern's advisors have been concerned about the fact that his campaign has been on the defensive since Eagleton's revelations last Monday. The advisors feel that if the campaign remains on the defensive for long, the parade to the White House will pass him right by. Later today, McGovern took to the offensive, the opportunity provided by the news conference held yesterday by President Nixon. In a statement released here, McGovern said the president is again deceiving and misleading the American people by pretending there's a chance for a negotiated settlement in Vietnam. Calling President Nixon an opportunist, Senator McGovern said yesterday's Nixon statements on the war were a transparent effort to justify his continued propping up of the corrupt Q dictatorship. Stephen Gear, ABC News, with the McGovern campaign in South Dakota.
Earlier this week, Senator McGovern sat down in the Black Hills of South Dakota with my colleague Harry Reisner and discussed his political philosophy and his strategy for beating President Nixon in November. Tonight we have another part of that interview.
You speak about three issues that are going to be the key: the credibility, the economic situation, and the war. Is that it? Is that
I think those are the three big ones. Now, there are some other issues that are very important. I think, for example, the whole question of tax reform is crucial. I think people are getting tired of paying high taxes. That is, the ordinary working middle-class person. And then reading in the press where some of the biggest corporations pay nothing at all because they go through the loopholes. I think that's a big issue, and we're going to draw that issue very sharply with Mr. Nixon.
The question recurrently comes up about you and Wall Street and you and American business. You talked about it at almost every news conference. I saw one analyst saying that the sharp rise in the stock market at the beginning of this week perhaps related to the president's announcement that Vice President Agnew would again be his candidate and was almost a certain winner. I know you think that's not so, but how do you deal with it?
Well, it worries me if Wall Street improves with the improving fortunes of Vice President Agnew. I had not thought that he was the chief anchor of the American economy. I really don't know what to make of these stories out of Wall Street. I don't think the condition of the American economy today is all that great. Now, here we are with almost 6% of our people unemployed, the biggest federal deficits we've had in history, the worst balance of payments position we've been in a long time, the first international trade deficit we've had since 1888. Why Wall Street would want another 4 years of that, I don't know.
How about your own economy, sir? Have you got enough money to run a campaign, or are you going to get it?
Well, it'll come in small batches. We've done very well to date with large numbers of small contributors. We'll start this campaign with a modest debt from the convention, but that'll be wiped out in a few days. We're really serious about this business of trying to get 1 million Americans to give us $25. If we can get $25 million from 1 million people, it'll be the most healthy, wholesome campaign, I think, ever conducted in the history of this country. We would like the president to tell us where he got that first $10 million in his campaign fund. He says there's no moral obligation to reveal it. We think there is. We think the American people are entitled to know where that money's coming from.
Well, perhaps, as with the case of debates, when you ask a second time, he'll change his mind.
I hope so. We're going to keep after him on the debates. We want this to be an open and straightforward discussion of the issues. We want everything disclosed. We're going to keep after that.
The question of debates, there's a little side question there. The theory is that they're bad for incumbents and good for challengers. Some previous challengers have made a commitment. If you were an incumbent president in 1976, would you guarantee debates?
I'll make that promise without equivocation. And I really think the American people are entitled to that. I don't claim I'm a better debater than Richard Nixon. This is his field. He's an old-time debater way back to high school and college days. And some of his top people are saying that they think I'm vulnerable on some of the things I've proposed. Well, let's find out how vulnerable I am. Let's find out how vulnerable Mr. Nixon's record is. This business of shooting at each other long distance, you know, Connally cracks me from Texas one day, and Laird pops off from the Pentagon the next day, and Secretary of State is sounding off in another forum. I'm out here in the Black Hills. Let's get the presidential candidates together in a series of nationally televised debates and get at these great issues before the country. I'm willing to defend my record. Is the president willing to defend his on the same stage with me? That's the question.
And that is all the time tunnel that we have for today. Now back to the present with ABC News Now.
And what you can do for your country. Mr.